Hey guys, this is Jermaine Morgan, and you're watching Jermaine Morgan TV, better yet, Grooves and Motivation. And today we're going to be talking about something really, really interesting. So you might want to stay tuned. So, what we're going to be talking about is No More Church. No More Church, the broken musician. So, stay tuned. All right, so we're going to jump right into this thing today. And before I get too far into this, I just want to say, as you guys are coming in, be sure to let me know in the comments where you're watching from. That's always super, super dope to see. You know me, I love that kind of stuff. If you've never been here before, again, I am Jermaine Morgan. And Grooves and Motivation is just what it sounds like. We're going to play a few little grooves and we're going to get into this talk. And I think this is a much, much needed conversation that's long overdue for so many. And I have my perspective on it. And keep in mind, you're on my channel, so a lot of this stuff is my perspective. But I do hope to shed some light on some things for a lot of people, provide some clarity on some other things, and hopefully it will be. I know this might be a little stretch, but hopefully it will be some healing that takes place after this conversation is had. So I see some people chiming in already. And y'all can keep doing that. You know, at some point I'll go back through and speak to everybody, BE, Prince, everybody. But we're going to get into this little groove idea. I had something that I wanted to play to, and it's a little fun little loop that I got going on. So yeah, just invite your peoples in. If you got some more people that you think this conversation would benefit today, invite them in. Invite them in. I normally don't do that, but if you got some people that you know this would benefit, send them a link, send them the invite for this YouTube live. We're going to be here for a little while talking about this. So good morning, everybody. Good morning. So let's jump into this groove. Feel like I'm a little out of tune. Give me a second. We're in B flat, by the way, if you got your bass out. Or your keyboard or whatever you're playing. Take a solo while I tune. I think my bass wasn't that bad. I got it out of tune trying to tune it. Just that little one note that was bothering me. Doing too much. I'm engineering and everything. All right, your turn to take a solo. I'm gonna have all y'all sing this by the end of the day. I'm playing everything but the drums. Beautiful, beautiful song to me. I'm being really, really biased, but it's one of them songs that make you want to play. I can literally stay here all day, but I'm not. So I'm gonna jump into this talk. I'm really stopping this time. Really stopping. Good morning, good wherever you are. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night to everybody who is checking this out today. No more church. I figured that this would be a heavy topic for a lot of people, a lot of musicians. And what brought this, to get right into it, what brought this along in my being a musician, man, for a long time. I've been in music since I can remember. Before I was even playing, I started playing at the age of 12. But before I started playing, my mom had me singing in the choir at church. So it's like, since I could talk, music has been. Oh, don't worry, Sean. Don't worry. It's going on wax. I appreciate that, man. Thank you all. I'm sorry. Before I get too far into it, let me speak to people. B.E. Wool, Dennis. Good morning to you. P. Santa Boogie. Good morning to you, Chris. Thank you, sir. Good morning to you. KP, good morning. Sean Lewis, if I ain't already spoke. Claudio Barris, Zuz Zulu, good morning to you. Kendrick, the homie Willis, I like that. Grenada Johnson, good morning to you. And Brandon Barnes, good morning. Base Cara, David Wallace, anybody else? Floyd, and I think I've spoke. And if I haven't spoke, charge it to my head and not to my heart. Y'all keep coming, and eventually I'm gonna say something to you. But let's get into this talk. So like I said, I've been having these conversations not on purpose. It's just things that come up. You know how musicians we speak, we talk about different things, and one of the common threads that has been amongst musicians in the conversations that I've had is like, and y'all can give me thumbs up if I ain't gonna say if this is you. You might want to just like the video instead of giving your thumbs up in the comments. But I've had a lot of musicians to come to me and just saying, good morning, Anthony. Musicians saying something along the lines of, man, I'm tired. I'm done. I'm tired of church. Right. And so, like, again, if that's you, just simply like the video. You ain't got to do nothing in the comment section. But if you feel free, hey. But I want to really deal with that today, and I want to really deal with a lot of where that comes from. Of course, this topic is so huge, there's no way I can cover every detail of it, but I wanted to do it justice, so to speak, today with giving you guys, again, this is grooves and motivation. But yeah, I'm like, I cut my teeth in church, and that's where I have the most experience. So the broken musician, I'm really dealing with the cats that have either played in church or currently playing in church, have some interest in church, that kind of thing. Again, because that's what I know. I know the most about. That's where I've spent the most time. And I hope that I can provide something for you guys. So I wrote some notes here. And then if you guys want them, I might print these off and come back later and add this to the video as a PDF and that kind of thing. But right now I don't have it as a PDF. But two extremes of musicians, and I want to just make sure we clarify who I'm talking to today, or who I'm talking about, rather. I'm talking to everybody, but who I'm talking about when I'm referring to these things. We got two extremes of musicians that I've noticed in my professional career. I've just a quick background. Like I said, I started in music real early, and I started playing at the age of 12. And since then, I've been fortunate enough to work from the backwoods Baptist church all the way up to the mega ministries of today. And I've worked from everywhere from being a keyboard player, a guitar player, a drummer at some point in a church, to directing the choir, leading worship, to being the person that was hiring musicians and that type of thing, music director. I mean, in terms of the music spectrum, I've covered a lot of ground in my years of doing this as a professional. So I think I kind of got an idea of what I'm talking about in this talk today. So I just want to give you some quick background there. So two extremes of musicians that I noticed, and this is where the notes can kind of start. We got the one that's talented / gifted, but lazy and or toxic. And we all know that dude. And some of you might be that dude. I'm just saying. But and just to clarify, this is the cat that's super gifted, can play, for lack of better words, he can play his behind off, right? He can really play, or she can really play, but they don't put in 100% effort because it's so natural for them and they can just do it. Oftentimes these people come in and they're like showboat musicians. They got to have the show, but they're not going to be the ones always like on time for stuff. Whatever the rules are, it's like they're always bending them a little bit. And typically, here's the part that's going to make some folks mad. Typically, these are the musicians that get paid more, in a lot of scenarios because of their, what's the word I'm looking for? Charisma. We'll use the word charisma. These musicians oftentimes can be the ones who get paid a lot more because sometimes people hear with their eyes and not with their ears. And sometimes people are listening only with their ears and not seeing with their eyes. They see, but they don't see, because a person's gift is so good or their talent level is so high. It's like, I see what they're doing, but I'm going to ignore it. So, you know what I mean? Meaning like leadership, pastors, those types of things can see these people and know that they're toxic to the actual ministry, but because they sound so good, I can't say nothing to them, and I'm not going to do anything about that. So whereas everybody else is catching a hard time, this person kind of skates free a lot. So that's the person I'm not talking about today. I just want to make sure I cleared all of that out. That's not the person that I'm referring to today. The musician that I'm kind of focusing on today is the second musician, the one who's talented and gifted and faithful. That's the musician that I'm talking to today. And if that's you, just hang around. I got some stuff that's going to help you. Now, again, the common thread with most of every musician that I've spoken with is, and it's not just musicians. This is people who work in ministry, who work, like I'm particularly referring to the music ministry in this talk. But if you can get some out of it that helps you in another place, by all means. But even singers and all that kind of stuff, it's like, I'm done. I'm done with church. I'm over it. I'm burnt out. And I've defined, in my opinion, three main or four main reasons that I feel like people are burnt out. And the reason why most musicians are saying, I'm done with church. No more church for me. Right. And so here's the four things that I've defined the reason why most musicians are burnt out. And so number one is underappreciated or undervalued. And if I hit one of yours, just say amen in the comments. You just put number one, number two, or just amen. Right? So the number one thing, I feel like musicians are underappreciated and undervalued. Number two, musicians are misunderstood. Right? And number three, mishandled. Right? A lot of musicians are mishandled, especially when it comes, and again, and this talk is about ministry and that kind of thing, working in ministry. And number four, they're just plain flat out spiritually drained. And I want to just kind of hit a little bit on all of those topics. And again, this topic is so big, I can't possibly cover all the dynamics of it, because I know there's two sides to every story. If a pastor were to get on here and he and I do a dialogue, I know he's going to have a list of 100 other things coming from his side that he's expecting, and he's not getting these things. So I understand this is a very somewhat complicated topic, because it's a lot of moving parts to it. But I want to deal mainly with the mental health of the musician, and how we can navigate through these things and not somewhat just throw in the towel, so to speak. All right, so let's deal with the number one thing: underappreciated, undervalued. I've seen this in so many spaces. Again, I started out talking about the musician that we're not referring to, and how that musician just seems like they get the royal carpet rolled out for them, whereas a person who's consistent, who's showing up, who's learning the music, who's doing what they supposed to do all of the time, it seems like the more that you do, the more in a lot of cases it's overlooked, and it's underappreciated. And a lot of times you can go, if you guys play in multiple places and you play gigs outside of church, the common thing that I've heard a lot of musicians, because I got a lot of musician friends who are in the industry, and one of the things I notice is like, yo, bro, I go out and I do this gig right here. I don't have all the drama. They pay me my money. I go home and I'm done. I know I got this rehearsal. I know I got these amount of songs to do. I come in, I do the rehearsal, I do the songs, and we're out. We're done. We do what we do. Showtime, bam, we hit it, and we're done. And so musicians over time who work in both worlds, I don't know how else to say that, but who work in both worlds, when they come back to the church and they see how much stress and how much anxiety comes with doing this thing. And oftentimes a lot of these musicians, not all of them, but a lot of these musicians, I'll say oftentimes you're underpaid for what you're doing. Sometimes cats are being overpaid because they're not putting in the level of work in accordance with what they're being paid. Because one thing and I got to say this, and I got to just put a pin right here real quick, but let me throw this in here. musicians, as I'm going to bat for us, I want us to realize what we do as musicians, especially if you're a full-time musician and you've been blessed in a situation where all you have to do is music. Sometimes you can forget how easy it is for you because you've worked really hard to be able to get your skill to. I'm not disregarding that. You work really hard to get your skill set to a certain place to make the work easy. So to come in for a few hours and make the amount of money that somebody is going to spend, all week trying to make, it's a blessing. So never forget the gratitude part of that, in terms of it's a blessing that you get to do this particular thing, and some people are willing to pay you somebody else's week salary to do what they do. So in a lot of cases, that might be the reason why you have going on what you have going on. But in other cases where you're being undercompensated for what you do, they want you to come out for a rehearsal, midweek rehearsal. You're coming out and doing a midweek service, this kind of thing, that kind of thing. A lot of you have had to take second jobs to be able to make ends meet, especially in the climate that we're in right now. What you make is not necessarily cutting it, but they're wanting your people in authority, the powers that be, so to speak. They're wanting grade A quality, but they want to pay, grade C pay, right? We want you to sound like this, but we're going to pay you for that, right? And so it doesn't match. So oftentimes in those situations, we feel underappreciated and undervalued, because it's like, wait a minute, like, I know I can go over here. And some of you, I even done this back in the day when I was young. I had a lot of offers. I was playing like keyboards then. And so I had a lot of offers that I would get to leave my home church, but I was so dedicated. And not only that, I'm like a guy, I settle in, like I'm loyal almost to a fault in a lot of areas. And some of you might be dealing with that same thing, where you're so loyal. And I don't want to get ahead of myself, but you're so loyal in a lot of situations. You let people undervalue you. And because of that, you're burnt out, you're frustrated. So let's get to the second thing. You're misunderstood. You're misunderstood because, there's an intentionality that you're putting behind what you're doing. And it's like the effort that's put into what you're doing, it seems like it always goes unnoticed. That effort that you put into showing up on time. And it's like the person, the powers to be again, they only have something to say when it's something wrong, right? And depending on the church you're at or the ministry, sometimes we can have those people who, take the liberty of getting on the microphone and trying to get you on the mic, or saying something crazy, or trying to clown musicians and stuff on the mic, whether it be a worship leader, whether it be a pastor, whether it be somebody that's in control or somebody that's in a power position. They can oftentimes use that position to intimidate people. And so in your mind, it's like, yo, but I'm just coming here and I'm trying to do a lot of this out of the goodness of my heart. Let's not mention you ain't paying me for that, right? And so, a lot of this stuff, we feel misunderstood because it's like, dude, I'm doing all of this stuff and they don't even see it. And they don't even understand what I'm giving up to be here. Like, there was times I've served in ministry and I've missed birthdays. I've missed really important engagements that I needed to be at outside of the church, but I said I couldn't do that engagement to be present for a ministry. And, that part of not being understood is frustrating, right? And that can also cause burnout as well. The third thing, mishandled. I'm going to pause. I'm going to let everybody take a breath. Being mishandled as a musician, I mean, I'm just giving you my thoughts and my observations from doing this for so long. How many of you ever had those things where you're playing for a church, those of you who are professional musicians and you're playing for a ministry, and they slip something in on you in terms of another service, another engagement that wasn't previously talked about. And don't get me wrong. Let's keep in mind who I'm talking to. I know that I'm talking to the faithful musician who always shows up, whose heart is for the ministry, is to do the best he can, to give everything he can for the ministry, to make sure everything is done in excellence. I realize that I'm talking to you, but at times, because you do that, that's oftentimes taken for granted. It's taken for granted, and there's a lack of gratitude. There's a lack of gratitude. And I was talking to somebody earlier today, and I was telling them, I'm like, man, you would be surprised how far gratitude goes. I mean, just imagine it, and just drop an amen on this one. Some of y'all, it's like it ain't even about the money. Like, I do this because I love to play, and it ain't even about the money. But it would mean so much more every now and again to get a thank you, to get a we really appreciate you. Y'all ain't even got to do a musician's appreciation, just to know that it's verbally communicated that you appreciate the effort that I'm putting forth to do this, because I got some other offers. I got some other things that I could be doing. I got another job, maybe not in music, that I could take, but this job would cause me to not be here and to be present for this ministry. And so my family, as a result of this, is suffering because I'm taking the L to be here, right? I'm taking the L to be here. For lack of better words, for the people who don't know what taking an L, what does that mean? I'm taking a loss. I'm taking a loss to be here, to show up, to be present, to make sure everything is handled and done in excellence. So I'm here, I'm present. And so because of all these things, I feel like I'm mishandled, because the loss that I'm taking in a lot of these scenarios, because you're not dumb to the fact of what's going on. You didn't hire me to do this. Let's take it a step further. Some of you guys went to a ministry like this is modern, right? So a lot of churches is on the wave with Ableton and running tracks and doing all this different stuff. Especially since the pandemic, a lot of churches had to adjust and start doing online stuff. So now some of you guys, they might have had you to start recording stuff at home and sending this stuff in, and basically you're doing a little mini session at home and sending your stuff in and that kind of stuff. And in return, you're getting, the church been down for the last few months and we ain't able to, pay you what you worth, but here's a little something to get you a little sandwich or something. Like, wait, hold on a minute. Now y'all just bought that LED screen. I know I'm gonna get in trouble for a lot of this, but it's cool. I need to make this case, and I'm gonna bring it home. So pastors, if you're watching, just hang tight. Don't get mad at me yet. Just hang tight. I'm gonna bring it home. But still, you got that LED screen on behind the stage. So wait a minute, how much did that cost? How much did that LED screen cost for us to be in hard times? And we can't afford to compensate musicians properly. Well, and a lot of those things, and I'm still on the tip of being mishandled. Well, I think you don't make musicians a priority. You, like leadership, you don't make your music a priority. So if you're getting less than excellence, maybe you should check if you're really making your musicians priority. If you're making the basic necessities of your musicians priority and just dealing with that alone, are you having conversations? Are you having conversations with your musicians to figure out what's going on? And I'll get more into that as we kind of wrap this up later. But yeah, those are some things you have to think about, because in other words, musicians are going to feel mishandled and they're going to get burnt out from that. And it's just going to be a matter of time. And they're waiting on you or somebody else to do or say the right thing on the right day. And they're going to let you have it, either by saying something to you and getting you together, or, because some people are at their wits' end and they're cool, they're calm, collected, and everybody has a measure of how much they can take before it's like, I'm done, I'm out of here. And a lot of you are at that place, or you've been at that place and you know what it looks like. And some people have crossed that threshold, like, you know what, I'm done with church. I've literally heard many people say, yo, I'm done with church. I'm good. I am good on church. And they didn't come to that conclusion just by doing something with one church. They played with multiple ministries. And after going over this again and again and again, and it seems like there's no end to the foolery that goes on, it's like, you know what? I'm good. I'm good on all of this. And unfortunately, that's the place of a lot of musicians, because they are burnt out. So for this last thing, spiritually drained. This is a really, really touchy one. Oftentimes you can be at a ministry who might have started out good, and you felt like you were being taught the word. You felt like, there was a lot of things that I was gaining when I first came here. But at some point, leadership got distracted. I'm saying leadership, including pastors, ministers, worship pastors, they got distracted and looked like we started kind of going for some other stuff. Like, wait, what is this? What are we doing? We weren't on this when I got here. So why are we switching things up now? Not, and I don't mean switching it up, not being steeped in tradition. I don't mean from that standpoint. I mean switching it up, and now you're doing something that almost goes against what you said you stand for and the things that you said you were about. Now you're doing something completely different. Your theology and what you're teaching is like, how can I say this? For me, I study the word a lot. And so I've been blessed to be around some good teaching and hear preaching. I grew up around preachers all my life, and I've seen the best and the worst of that, everything that comes with that. So because of that, I read and I study a lot for myself. So when a person is up there teaching, so to speak, and you just making racket, I'm not getting anything out of that. And so I'm here to do a job, yes, but I'm also here to try to be a part of this ministry, and I need to eat too, just like everybody else. And so you want musicians to stay there and stay engaged during the service, but you're not talking about anything. Or you're using your pulpit as an opportunity to beat everybody down in the congregation because something you're frustrated about because of lack of leadership. That's a whole nother conversation that I don't really have time to get into. But you know what I'm saying? So now, instead of being built up or feeling like I'm being fed, I'm starving. I'm literally starving. I'm sitting here and I'm listening to this and I'm sitting like, what are we talking about? What is this about? Like, huh? Where they do that at? Like, wait a minute, you're supposed to. And so all of these things are going through your head, and week after week after week of that, eventually you get drained. And you're just like, you know what? I'm here. And all of these things are literally conversations that I've had with guys. And so they get to the point where they're like, you know what? I go there, I play, I get my check, and I go home. And unfortunately, I have to admit, I've been there. I've been there to where, I tapped out. Like, it's like I'm not even, I hear what you're saying, but I can't even get with you. And it's no disrespect. I understand you. I respect you as a person. I respect you as a brother. I love you, but I ain't eating. Like, excuse my bad grammar, but I'm keeping it 100 with y'all today. I'm not getting anything spiritually. I'm not getting anything. And we can go through a list of so many other things that are happening where spiritually it's a dog and pony show. It's smoke and mirrors. Like, there's nothing real that's happening here. We have all of these things that we're doing, and then we're stomping. Like, and let me, pastors, leaders, listen. Nothing frustrates a musician more, especially the second musician that I'm referring to. Let me remind y'all who I'm talking about. I'm talking about the dedicated, the faithful musician, the one that shows up, the one that you can count on. The one that's trying to live this thing right. All right. So nothing frustrates a musician more than trying to set an atmosphere and playing and creating something. And like, you did your stuff in terms of learning the songs, doing the music, and y'all had a knockout service, and then y'all quench the spirit because just whatever. Like, if it's an announcement or we just need to move on and do something else, I'm completely aware that we have to be mindful of time because we're in a different day where people don't like respect and value church like they used to. And so because of that, you quench the spirit in order to move on to the next thing, to make sure that we're not upsetting the people in the audience. Meanwhile, frustrating the Spirit of God. I'll wait. So we're doing these things, and we are as musicians, we are very, very sensitive. We're very, very sensitive in these moments. And so when you're tapped in, like, this is part of your artistry, this is part of your creativity, this is part of your spirit. This is the way you pour back to God. While everybody else lifting their hands and doing all these things, you are literally pouring back to God. You're giving everything you have by way of your drums, your keys, your guitar, whatever you're doing, you're giving everything you have. And when that is quenched and is stopped for no good reason, and we just move on as if what just happened didn't happen, musicians get the mindset of what's the point? What's the point? What difference does it make? So all of those four reasons, we're burnt out. We're good. We're like, you know what? It doesn't matter. And that's a horrible place to be as a musician, as a believer. And so what I want to talk to today, I've outlined the problem. And I want to, based on the comments I'm seeing popping up, I'm clearly outlining the problem that a lot of you guys can identify with. And again, this conversation is well informed. Like the preacher say, I know what I'm talking about in this particular conversation. I know what I'm talking about. So here's some solutions for those. So we outline four things. We're talking about underappreciated value. That was the number one thing in terms of the reason for burnout. The number two thing was being misunderstood. The number three thing was being mishandled. And the number four thing was spiritually drained. So I don't want to give you a whole bunch of problems and not provide a solution, because that's not helpful. That's just me on here venting if I don't give, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm just on here talking, and that don't add anything to anybody. I'm just saying what you already know. So let's see if we can provide a little clarity for these situations and see if I can help some of you guys. So the number one thing, value, appreciation. A church or an individual can never truly know your value or your full potential. All right. So let me say this before I get too deep into this. I laid out and put the pastors and all these people on Front Street, and I know who I'm talking to. I'm talking to the faithful musician. But now the stuff that I'm going to say is going to call you to do some, introspection, like you to look and see, okay, I see what you're saying. It's going to cause you to do that. So again, a church or an individual can never truly know your value or your full potential. That's for you to figure out and to create ways you decide what your value, create ways that you can decide what your value is and how you get paid. And side note to that, your value is often determined in the marketplace by the level of problems that you solve. I'm gonna say something and I'm gonna work my way backwards with it. So with that being said, your value is often determined in the marketplace by the level of the problem that you solve. Now we're talking church, right? Yeah, but we don't like to say this because it's taboo, but church is a business. Unfortunately, that's what it is. Like you getting paid, they got to make money to pay you. It's a business. It is what it is. So when I say marketplace, I'm referring to the church as well, right? We're there to do ministry, but you still expect something at the end of it. A lot of you, some of you guys, you play for your churches for free. And this applies to you too, by the way. So you don't excuse yourself from the conversation like, my church don't pay me. I don't get paid at my church. Calm down. It's all right. You can still listen to this too. All right. So your value is often determined by the level determined in the marketplace by the level of the problem that you solve. Here's the thing. Being a musician, we pride ourselves on the years. Man, they don't know how many years I put into doing this, and I worked on my skill and I honed it out. I had to walk 3 miles to get lessons. Like we had them extreme stories when it's talking about what we had to put in order to get where we are. And I get it. I do it myself. I've done it. But here's the thing we have to understand. They can't replace you. That's a hard truth that we don't want to hear, but it's the truth. It's the truth. Now, I got to tell you guys this because some of you guys don't know me from a hole in the wall. So I got to give you this. And I'm going to give you the rude awakening with making this statement. And careful in the comments, just be careful in the comments when I say this, because I know some of you guys got strong feelings about what you feel. I mean, hey, you feel what you feel, but be careful in the comments because, Anyway, all that being said, so I many of you may or may not know, I used to play for New Birth, Bishop Eddie Long, for, I can't say full 12 years because he passed away before my stint was up there at the church. So at least 9 years, 8 to 9 years I played for that church with Bishop Eddie Long. And he basically made that mega ministry what it is, with the help of God. He basically made that mega ministry what it is. So playing there, I seen a lot happen. I seen a lot of stuff happen, and not what you thinking about, but in the context of what I'm talking about, I saw the guitar player that we had, and I'll start here. The guitar player that we had, faithful, man, Calvin Lopeman, God rest his soul, faithful, phenomenal guitar player. Faithful, faithful, faithful. Calvin was always there. I'm talking about for everything that they had. And even when the church went through this season where everybody got cut, I don't think he was even getting paid anymore for the midweek stuff and the rehearsals. He was only getting paid for Sunday, and he still showed up anyway. And he was faithful. I mean, faithful to the call. And he was always present. But Calvin took sick, and he got cancer, and it did a number on him. But the whole time, man, he showed up consistently. I watched that man come in there, and his ankles were literally like that big, and he literally had to take his shoes off and sit his shoes to the side, and sometimes leave his shoes untied because he had so much fluid in his legs, he couldn't keep his shoes on. But he was there every week. This dude literally, and I got to take a minute to say this because, you know, give honor where honor is due. This dude, I don't know if you ever been to New Birth, but if you come into the front, which you think is the back, but it's actually the front, the way we come in, some of you guys that may know the church, you have the circle in the back, and then when you walk in, there's this big Samson statue that used to be there. So we, as the musicians, used to come in on that side. So the brothers, the band, we would always, when Calvin got really, really sick, we would always help him come in. So oftentimes, you know, one person would grab his guitar, one person would grab his pedals, that kind of thing, so he could just, you know, walk in with his phone or whatever. And so Calvin would have to take breaks. He walked from his car, and I would probably say that was, man, I don't know how many feet that would have been, but it was a good bit. It was a pretty long way. Let's say 50 yards or whatever. He walked from his car to the edge of the walkway. He would have to sit down on the walkway, take a break, you know, take him a 2-minute breather, get up, walk into the church. And before he got ready to go on stage, there's like, you walk around the back of, you know, the stage and everything. And it's a little area where the choir can go up. And so some stairs right there before you walk in. He'd literally have to take a break again there, sit there, get himself together, and then walk all the way around, and then go get in his seat and sit down. And he'll be completely exhausted just from the walk. But when it came down to counting that song off, this dude gave 110% until he checked out, until he couldn't do it anymore. And I say that and I paint that picture to you to just show you the faithfulness and the level of giving till he didn't have anything else left to give. But with all of that, once he died, that was it. Okay, we need somebody to play the guitar. And I'm not trying to say that in a negative way towards the church. My point that I'm making with this is, okay, yeah, you're gone, so we still need guitar. So no matter how, I'm saying this to you so you'll think long term. No matter how good you are right now, you're replaceable, unfortunately. And let's take it a step further. Some of you may have known about the when Bishop Long passed. I was MD at the time. And there was this huge service that we did. And, you know, we went through all of this different stuff concerning the service. And, you know, it was interesting. And it was broadcast around the world. So many of you might have saw it and you didn't know who I was. But, yeah, that was me. So I was playing. So with that being said, what was interesting to me, shortly after this man died, who started this ministry, who this whole big thing is built on the shoulders of this guy, when he died, they were looking for a replacement. So, and what that said to me at the time is like, if this guy who started this ministry, who's this, you know, household figure, good or bad, whatever your thoughts is none of my business, and I don't want to know. But this guy who started this ministry, if he can start this ministry, pass away, and they still keep moving and looking for somebody else, what does that say about you and you being replaceable? So I say all of that to paint a picture to let you know it's your responsibility to make sure that you show your value in the marketplace and you create and you find ways to add more value, because everybody can play now. You saying, well, can't nobody come here and do what I do. Ain't nobody gonna be faithful like me. And fool around and die. You'll find out. It's going to be somebody else that'll come in there and do exactly what you do, probably do it faster, probably do it better. So never get too above yourself in thinking that what I'm doing, they need me. Yeah, they might need you for the time being, but you have to keep in mind that you are replaceable. All right, so Jermaine, you telling me this, so how is that helpful? Well, what can you do with your gift that solves a problem? What can you do that solves a problem? One of the main reasons that I started teaching and stuff and putting videos and those types of things on my website, I understood that people were looking for certain things that I do. Like I naturally come up with bass licks and that kind of thing. And you might look at it like, dude, really? Bass licks? Yeah, really, bass licks. Like people were looking for bass licks. And I figured it out because I was posting videos to YouTube, and people were watching the videos, and I noticed that the videos started doing really, really well when I started showing bass. Like, wait a minute. Okay, I wonder if I put this together and I package this thing, would people be interested in buying it? I didn't know. So I tried it and people started buying it. I'm like, wait, okay, well, let me put this together and see what people be interested in buying this. And they did, because what I found in that is there was a problem that people were having, not me, because it's not an issue for me. It was a strong suit for me, but for somebody else, it was a problem. So what I did in the marketplace is I found a problem to solve. And what I started noticing, the more that I did that, I was able to start replacing gigs. So where I was saying yes to this gig, yes to that gig, and having to do this and having to do that, by selling these courses and doing these things, I started being able to, get a little bit more control of my career as a musician. I'm like, wait a minute. I had a cap of how many people I could teach when I was doing these Skype lessons and this kind of thing. And it was very inconsistent with people not showing up and these types of things. And so because of those things, it's like, man, I can't count on this. I can't really count on this. And I noticed once I started recording the lesson that people needed and I made it available, tons of people started buying it. So that means somebody in Japan could be learning bass from me at 2:00 in the morning while I'm asleep. I'm like, wait a minute. So anyway, we can get back into that on a different training. But today I'm just trying to show you guys that you have to figure out what problem that you can solve in the marketplace with the gifting that you have. It ain't limited to just church in terms of just playing only for church. Now, I don't want to diminish the importance of church and using your gift to glorify God. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying, but I do want you to understand that there is another place that you can be using your gift and some way it can be profiting you when you understand the type of value that you add to the marketplace and you determine what that value is worth based on how you know this thing is going to return the value for the person that you're giving this thing to. What is this service that I'm offering to you? What is it worth? What is this product that I'm offering to you? What is it worth? Right? And so if this gets you one more gig and I charge you $25 for this course, and because the vocabulary you were able to create because of the stuff I showed you, you start landing more gigs. Each one of those gigs pay $250. Let's say you land 10 gigs. That's $2,500. You only paid $25 for this course. So I know I'm giving you 100 times the value. I think my math is right. If not, charge it to my head, not my heart. I'm giving you 100 times the value of what I charged you for. So now I can justify what this needs to cost. You see what I'm saying? You see where I'm going with this? All right. So now you don't depend so heavily on a church to take care of you because you know that you can serve your gift out without compromise somewhere else. That's the problem that a lot of us who are dedicated have. It's like, I want to use this, but I don't want to compromise it. Well, what other kind of way? And I'm using my example. Maybe my example doesn't work for you. So you might need to find something that you can do, that you can serve value to the marketplace that allows you to not depend solely on a ministry. So now where you were burnt out because you were undervalued, you can kind of calm that down because now I understand that my value is not tied up in you or how you look at me or how you view me. I understand that I'm providing so much value over here. It's a pleasure to come here and do this, whether you value it or not, because I got so many other opportunities and I got so many other avenues rather that I can extend this and have my value shown. Right. So anyway, I got to move off of that one. So I need that $25 lick. Exactly. All right. So the next point that we made was misunderstood. There's a verse, Proverbs 4:7. I'm paraphrasing. And all you're getting, get an understanding. If you're misunderstood and all you're getting, the Bible speaks of that, get an understanding, get an understanding. That verse is speaking about wisdom, and you can be learning all of this different stuff, but in all you're getting, that needs to be some understanding. So here's what I have. If you're misunderstood, that means there's a lack of communication. There's a lack of communication. And last but not least, it's your responsibility to make sure that communication happens. Now, earlier I was talking to the pastors and the leaders about, making sure that your band is good and all this stuff. But what if your pastor doesn't watch this? What if your pastor has so much on his plate, to my point, that he don't know to come to you because there's way too much he got going on? Your leader, man, you don't know what folks have going on at home. And oftentimes, I've said this so many times, and I recently had a conversation with somebody as well, and I was telling my wife, man, I was frustrated. It was something that I was doing, and I was getting frustrated, and we had a conversation, and I told my wife, I was like, that conversation was so needed. That conversation was so needed because oftentimes we can put 2 and 2 together and get 6. All right. If y'all some mathematicians, you know that ain't right. so you can put things together that don't go together, and it gives you something that doesn't equal up. Right. So oftentimes you need to set up this conversation with your leadership, with your pastor. Maybe you can start out of protocol, because you know how churches are with protocol. Maybe you need to start with your worship pastor, or start with your music director. Go up the line of commands, or see if you can get all 3 of them in a room. Ideally, honestly, it's better if you have a music director and you have that whole chain of command where you have a music director, worship pastor, then pastor. Here's my advice from a leadership position. Here's my advice. Start with your music director first. Try your best to communicate with your music director, whatever your concerns are, even if it's like, hey, I don't feel like whatever the complaints are. Try not to come to him with just a complaint, like, look, this is just a soft conversation. Hey, bro, can we do lunch? Can we sit down? Can we, whatever, make it light. Because what you don't want to do is come across adding more stress to somebody's plate who already has a lot going on. Right. So we want to be tactical, and we want to use wisdom when we do these things, but we do want to start the conversation. So go to your music director first. And if your music director is unapproachable or is unwilling to speak to you, and I can't really see most music directors being that way, because most people, if they're in that leadership position, they have leadership qualities. So they should be able to be approachable. And if it's you, maybe reverse this and go talk to your team and make sure everybody's good. You know what I'm saying? Ask questions to see where everybody's at. The idea behind this, the being misunderstood thing, the idea behind this is the communication aspect of the conversation. We need to be able to have these conversations. So now, after you talk to the music director, give it some time. Give him time to go to the worship pastor and communicate this. Now, if you see where there is no change, you can ask, even in that conversation, like, if you feel like you and your music director didn't really reach something because he's like, man, this is above my pay grade. And like, now with respect, so do you mind if I talk to, the worship pastor or the person who's next in command? Do you mind if I have a conversation with them? No, by all means. Because when you handle it that way, it kind of gets rid of the miscommunication stuff that happens, or the messiness that happens. You went over my head, or you talked to this person, because what's going to happen, the chain of command is always going to go back down, and they're going to talk to whoever was supposed to be handling this thing. So if you skip over your music director and go straight to the worship pastor, now the worship pastor is going to be coming back to the music director and say, hey, did Jermaine talk to you about X, Y, and Z? No. Well, he came to me and he said this, and that. And first question that the music director is going to have, well, why didn't he say anything to me about that? You know what I'm saying? So you want to kind of handle things correctly. And so now, just say you talk to the worship pastor, and let's fast forward. The worship pastor say, hey, man, this is above my pay grade. Same thing. It's the same thing that we practice. We want to practice honor in everything that we're doing. So now you ask the worship, would it offend you if I, went to this with the pastor or whatever, or even if you and I both set up a meeting? I'm cool if you're there. Or if it's a situation where you feel like it needs to be a one-on-one with you and the pastor. Depending on the size ministry, this might be something that you can do or cannot do. If it's a very large ministry, you might not get to meet with the pastor because he simply doesn't have the time. You might get to meet with an elder or assistant pastor, somebody else that, another chain of command. And that's okay. It's not important who you speak to per se. You just want the results. You just want to be able to communicate whatever your situation is. And oftentimes what you might find out once you do this, go through the proper channels to have this conversation, you know what I'm saying? You start finding out stuff you didn't know before. And it gives you a peace when you walk away from the conversation, or it should, let's say that. It should give you a peace when you walk away from the conversation with more information, like, oh, okay, wow, I didn't know that. Like, cause they might tell you, yo, the church is in debt, bruh. Like, we are hanging on by a thread. We going through Sunday morning and we doing our thing Sunday and Wednesday, but our attendance is down, our offering is down, everything is down. And so we just simply don't have it. And so this is just where we are. And so once you get that clarity, it helps you just like, oh, okay, all right, well, I get it. Right. So in that regard, where there's clear communication, or even if it's a situation where they're pulling more on you and it's like, wait a minute now, I ain't signed up for all this. Can we renegotiate the contract if there's a contract? My point is, you can't be afraid, in all of your humility, you can't be afraid to speak up and let people know what you need. Because at the end of the day, if something happens to you and your family, or if somebody else comes in and you've been doing all of this different stuff and they decide they want to switch gears on you, you're going to feel some type of way if you didn't communicate. Because what the other person is going to do, just say if you're a music director, you're running stems, you're running Ableton, you're doing all this stuff, you halfway being the sound guy. Now, something happens, you can't do it, and you send a sub or something or whatever, you come up with the scenario. And so now they hire this guy. This guy in the beginning, he communicates what his desires are. Oftentimes when we have these conversations with people, and I want to make mention of this as well, in terms of the communication part of it. Oftentimes when we go into jobs, they give us a list of things that they are looking for. And I'm talking about a job that that you're overqualified for. But because of desperation and being just so hungry for something, we just take whatever they give us and we don't outline anything. So they give you a contract and tell you all these things. We're expecting for you to be here for Sunday, for Wednesday, for whatever rehearsal that we have. We're expecting for you to be here for special services and all these different things. And all you're looking at on the paper right then is that number that they say they're going to pay you. All right, cool. Yeah, I can be there. I can be there for everything. And then a little time happens and it's like, wait a minute. Wait, y'all just did a whole revival. I live 30 minutes from here and gas is $187 a gallon. Like, wait, wait a minute. Right? So you need to have those conversations in the beginning. Don't be too intimidated that you won't have the conversation and say what needs to be said, because you need to know from the gate. If you're getting ready to go into a situation, right? If you're getting ready to go into a situation, you need to be able to communicate from the gate. Look, okay, I see that you guys always respectfully, I see that you guys have this, and these are the things that you require. Well, ask the question. All right, so do you guys do like revivals or anything of that nature? Oh yeah, we do that. Okay, I didn't see it on the contract. So how do you guys typically handle that? And so, you know what I'm saying? It's like, once you ask that question, I think that gives you, it gives you a position to be able to say, yay, I can do this, or no, I can't do this. I don't think this is going to work for me. And I don't think you should make your final decision based, well, if they can't pay me for no revival, I ain't doing it. But my point in saying this, and I use revival as an example, my point in saying this, if you have the conversation with somebody, at least you know what to expect going in, versus not having a conversation at all. And you get a whole bunch of stuff thrown at you, because from their perspective, they knew the whole time the type of stuff that they do in their church. You just didn't, because you didn't ask questions. You didn't ask questions. Are there any special services? Are we required to be here? How does all of this stuff work? So when you start asking those types of questions and getting the answers you need, you can make a better informed decision about whether or not this is the best place for you. Because remember, you were qualified for it. So it's not a matter of if you're good enough for the position. If they're talking to you and you're this far into the conversation, well, you guys need to know where each other stand, right? And so having those conversations, I think, and all these things I'm talking about, to help you in the area of being burnt out, right? Because we don't want to get further along down the road and now you're burnt out. So if you're currently in a situation and you're like, well, I don't agree to all of this stuff now, still have the conversation. See if it's possible to set up a meeting, have a conversation and see what's possible. Oftentimes, if you ask the question, at least you put it on their minds. So now they are thinking about it and clearly communicate. If you don't want to leave, if you don't want to end your relationship with that ministry, clearly communicate to them like, look, this is kind of my concerns. I want to be here. I want to be present, but this is going on and this is not working for me. You have to speak, communicate, because if you don't show up and you just start subbing out a lot, they're going to look at you kind of crazy, right? Unless you guys previously talked about that, they're going to be looking at you. And so I'm talking on both sides of the table because I've worked in leadership as well as working as a musician only. So I'm trying to hopefully give you guys some things that you can kind of look at things from both sides. All right. So mishandle, set boundaries, and that kind of go with the whole thing that I was talking about with the communication, communicating your expectations early. Don't be so desperate and hungry for money that you don't communicate your expectations as well. So I got kind of ahead of myself on that last one. So you can kind of tie those two in together when it talks about being mishandled. It goes with the communication, because that communication is going to be the key thing to everything that you're trying to do as a musician. That communication, especially in a ministry, that's going to prevent so much more burnout. All right, so I'm going to speed on through this thing because I've been on here longer than I thought I would. Spiritually drained, the final one. You are responsible for your own spiritual life. I hate to tell you that, but you're responsible for your own spiritual life. There's a verse, Philippians 2:12, if you want to jot that down. Work out his own salvation with fear and trembling. Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. And that's one verse, one scripture reference. But yeah, there's a high responsibility on the pastor. But if you know you're going to stay there and you're not going to leave, and you feel like you're not getting fed the stuff that you should be getting fed, then that's your responsibility. And let me say this, especially if you are a man who has a family. If you have a family, you are a man and your family is a part of this ministry, and you're not in a position where you can just leave cold turkey, and you know that the stuff that you're hearing ain't where it's supposed to be. Well, it's your responsibility as a man, as the head of your household, to teach your family the truth and what's right, according to what you're understanding, your own salvation, what the standards for your house is. It's your responsibility to figure that out. You can't put everything on the pastor and talk about, he ain't talking about nothing, so I'm finna go over here and go get me a drink. I ain't no sense of me being so serious about worship and all these different things. If the pastor, he ain't preaching nothing, and the worship leader, they doing this and they doing, that's none of your business. It is, and it ain't. Let me explain what I mean by that. There's a standard that should be immovable, right? There's a standard that should be set. And if leadership is not setting that standard, well, won't you set it? Oftentimes, I feel like we look at other people and we blame other people for where we are because, well, they wasn't doing it and they wasn't, you know what I'm saying? So we have all these excuses, and it's like almost the type of thing where monkey see, monkey do, and then we blame everybody else for the results we end up having because of the decisions that we made. If another person is choosing to go left and you know it's a pothole over there, then you don't have to choose to go left. Go right. You go right. Let them go left. They're going to find out sooner or later that it's a pothole there. But I don't have to be there and be in a pothole with them when they find it out. It's my responsibility. I can read. And if you can't read, you can hear. Do you want to be on here listening to me today? So you can pull it up. You can listen. It's so many resources that are available now that we can educate ourselves on what we need to know in terms of the things that we need to be doing as it pertains to ministry. There are tons of resources available that we can look for. And there's a verse talks about, ask and it shall be given. Seek and you shall find, and knock and the door shall be opened unto you. In God's kingdom, the way things work, as far as that verse is concerned, if you ain't asking If you ain't seeking, if you ain't knocking, then yeah, you're never going to come to the thing that you're looking for. What we went back talked about earlier in terms of the amount of value that you add to the marketplace. If you're not trying to see what type of value you add to the marketplace, then you will never see it. If you're satisfied with the gig and what they give you for this gig, as long as I can go do this, I'm straight. As long as they pay me this, I'm straight. As long as I can go over here and they make sure that they take care of X, Y, and Z, I'm straight. If that's your mentality, then you're not looking for any other way to add value to the marketplace. You're not. So likewise, spiritually, if you're not searching after spiritual things, then you're not going to find it because you're not interested in it. You will hear it. And talking about the parable of the man sowing the seeds, like you're going to hear it and it'll sound good when it comes to your ears. But if you don't have the heart or the mind or the desire to know more or to learn more, you're going to lose it. So like right now, me talking the things that I'm giving you, if depending on the level of importance this is for you, then you'll do something about what I said, right? Or you'll just go right back to what you always do. And what I said will be something in your memory bank or something that's way in the recesses of your mind that you never pull out again until somebody else mentions it and it becomes interesting then. No, you have to have that thing about you where you like, you know what, if ain't nobody else on this, I'm on this, right? If I got to stand here myself, if I got to do this by myself, if I got to lift my hands because I know the presence of God is here by myself, I'm going to lift them by myself, even if I look like a fool doing it. So it comes down to you personally when it comes to your spiritual things. And let me say this. I found out, and I got to be transparent with you guys because other than that, I'll just be a talking head just saying stuff. I served the church, New Birth, for, again, 12 years. And when I left, it was 2019. I left. I wasn't the happiest camper when I left. I didn't get fired or anything like that, but I resigned or I stepped down, so to speak. And I was what I'm talking about now, I was over church because of years and not just New Birth, but years and years of working in ministry and just what I felt from doing this for so long. I was done. Like this is the first time I feel like I've shared this publicly with anybody. Private people know what it is, but publicly I haven't shared this with anybody. But I was done. I was done with church. I'm like, you know what? And don't get me wrong, when I say I was done with church, meaning trying to be somebody's musician. I was over that. I did know even at the time I was being called to something higher in terms of kind of like what I'm doing now. I know that there's been a lot placed in me and I know what this cost. So let me be clear when I say that. I wasn't done with God. I wasn't done with reading the word and done with spiritual things, but trying to be somebody's bass player and all this stuff, I was over it. Like I was good. Like, yeah, I'm good. But what I found, and maybe this is the healing part for somebody, when I did my introspection of myself, I saw me. God showed me when I left and I had all of that time. This is pre-pandemic. I started spending a lot of time with God because I needed clarity. You know, I'm ahead of a whole household. So I just walked away from one of my main sources of income. So, okay, what's the vision? What we doing? Right. You know, so I needed clarity from God. And what I got was a flashlight shine on me. It's like, bro, you ain't been spending no time with me spiritually. You can be so busy doing church stuff that you don't have time for God. Let that sink in for a minute. Anything, I got this, let me find this note. This was so interesting. I had to write it down. And I think this was Dr. Tony Evans that said this. He says, an idol is a noun, person, place, or thing, any person, place, or thing that you look to as your source to meet your needs. And now let's take it a step further. Idolatry is worshiping the wrong God or worshiping the right God the wrong way. Idolatry is worshiping the wrong God or worshiping the right God the wrong way. Again, this is Dr. Tony Evans. That's a quote that I wrote down from him, and I was like, wow. Now, I had this, but way before I got that quote, that kind of sums up what I was thinking about. But way before I got that, what I found in 2019 is like, bro, you don't really pray. You don't really spend any time with God. And so you're going through the motions of doing this every week because you know how to do church. You know how to do. That's the problem, I think, in a lot of our churches is so many of us who are in the worship arena, we know how to do church, not be the church. We know how to do church stuff. And no, and it's across the board. No matter if you're black or white, Hispanic. I played at Hispanic churches. I played at black churches. We know how to do church. We know how to do it, right? And so oftentimes we can get so busy doing ministry that we forget to include God in it. And so before you know it, you've become cynical in terms of the things you believe, in terms of doing your job. Because I must admit, I had got cynical. Like, I was like, I come do what I do, and mentally I tap out. I'm being 100% transparent with you guys because I hope this frees somebody. But mentally, I was tapping out. Like, I was doing it. I get up there and do my thing, play, and then once I sat down, it's like I'm out, bro. Like I'm good. I'm good on all of this. Like, yeah, y'all just make sure that check clears. That's literally where I was at. And I understood when I started getting private time with God as he started ministering back to me, because I started making an effort to seek him out and to spend time with him, literally coming in this studio, laying right over there on my face before God, crying my eyes out many mornings, just going into worship and trying to seek, because this was my professional career had been consumed with church and doing everything churchy. The other thing I was doing outside of playing at church was, traveling, most notably Canton Jones, and then some little stuff here and there, studio work, some other things. But everything consisted of church. So now with everything not being centered around church, it's kind of like that guy who's been an athlete all of his life, and now he can't play anymore, and he don't know who he is. I kind of somewhat went through that. I still had an outlet in other areas, like even doing this, groups of motivations and going different places and speaking from time to time. That gave me an outlet, but the consistency that I had all those years with church, I no longer had. So there was a struggle there, and like, okay, God, what is this? Where do I go from here? I know there's something higher that I'm supposed to be doing, but I'm not 100% sure what it looks like. And he began to show me. Little by little, he began to show me stuff and give me ideas and showed me how to navigate where I currently am now. So now 3 years, almost 4 years later, I'm in a different place than I was. And I'm like, I know now when I go back in, like lately I've been filling in Pastor William Murphy's church. I fill in there from time to time. I fill in there from time to time, depending on when you're watching this video. But yeah, so I've been doing that. So as I've been reintroduced to church stuff and church world, I now go in with a different perspective. I'm not cynical. I ain't over it, but I do have a higher sensitivity to like, no. Before you start pointing your finger at all of them, check you. Are you good? Are you just coming up here and just doing your thing because this is what you know you can do? And this comes easy for you now because you've done it so long? Or are you checking yourself at the door? Before you pick up this instrument, have you prayed? Are you being accountable for the people who you're ministering to through these strings, through this instrument? Are you accountable? What did you bring in here on your spirit before you start playing? So before you complain about anybody quenching the spirit of God, is your spirit right just because the song sounded good? Just because you guys went into a moment and emotionalism kicked in and you're feeling some type of a way, where's your spirit? What was you doing last night? What was you doing on your phone before you came in here? If we go back through your search history, you going to be straight? Real questions. So oftentimes, to the point of what I'm saying, oftentimes the burnout, when we really get to the nitty gritty of it, I know I made some great points because I amen my own self on the points that I'm saying. But the real culprit of the burnout is your lack, in a lot of cases, your lack of digging and trying to get a connection with God because you feel like you already got it. So you're burnt out because you're looking for somebody else external to feel something that needs to be filled internally. The Bible speaks in, and this is my last point, John 4:24. God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. So us as musicians, we have to realize that integrity, accountability has to be at the top of everything we do. We have to be accountable, man. I was talking to somebody on yesterday, and it's so sad because so many musicians have been hurt over the years by different scenarios, and especially church. We become bitter instead of better. And instead of spiritually getting closer to God, what we do is we become professionals at knowing how to navigate around the hurt. And we teach the younger generation coming in that same cynicism. So they look at us because they look up to us and they mimic what we do, not knowing that at one point you didn't act like that. You had a heart for ministry. You had a heart for God. You had a heart for the people that you were there to serve. But because being burnt out, because being mishandled, because, being misunderstood, all these different things, you turn into this other dude. So now these young cats who are coming around you to glean from you, they're gleaning your foolishness too. So the Bible speaks, it would be better for a millstone to be hung around your neck and you be cast into the sea than for you to cause one of these young ones to stumble. Man, we have to be careful. We have to be accountable for these people who are watching us, these people who are watching our witness. I see so many people that I look up to, or I have looked up to in years past, and I see that they're reckless on social media. They don't care what they say. And I'm not trying to tear down anybody's character, anybody's freedom of speech, but there is an accountability factor. Once you say you do a certain thing and you're about a certain thing, then there has to be a standard. I'm not trying to tell people what kind of music they can play, what kind of music they can listen. Look, that's you. Work out your own salvation with with fear and trembling, just like I am. But my thing that I'm saying is there has to be a level of accountability and there has to be a level of integrity. And until we reestablish that, the people who are following us, what do you expect for them to do? Don't talk about the young musicians. If you haven't represented anything that's integral to them, what are you talking about? And instead of complaining about them, walk it out. Because people learn more from how you walk than from what you say. My kids listen to what I say, but they mimic what I do, right? They rarely mimic what I say unless it's something funny. But they listen to what I say, but they mimic what I do. So your walk has to be stronger than your talk. So for all of these people, you are leaders. All of these people who are watching you, they're counting on you to be a standard. So maybe the leadership is trash, right? Maybe your worship pastor is doing God knows what. But what standard are you? If you're the music director, what standard are you setting? What standard are you setting? One thing I used to love, and I said that was my last thing like 10 minutes ago. This is my other last thing. One thing I used to love, Dario Edgecombe. Some of you guys might know who he is, but that was my MD for many years when I was at New Birth. And one thing I used to love is the authenticity of that dude when we played music. And, hit the type of spirit and the way he carried himself in leadership. I can't speak for his personal life. I don't know anything that he does in his personal life that has nothing to do with me. But what I saw from him as a leader, my music director, it always inspired me. And then when I would see him go in on the songs and he stopped playing, he lifting his hands, or he's still playing and I'm just seeing the tears falling down his face as he's worshiping, I had so much respect for him because I'm like, even in this place, even on this platform, even with these thousands of people that are watching us, man, we on the Word Network, we on BET, we everywhere at that time. But, even in all of that, this dude is pouring his heart out in this instrument. And he made sure that nothing got in the way of, we all had moments. Don't get me wrong. None of us are perfect. But for the most part, If you guys listen to any of those worship moments that happened back in the day, man, he made sure that nothing got in the way of that moment, what's happening right then. As God is moving in this moment, like we would get oftentimes on a melody, and we wouldn't move. We would stay right there on that melody. Ain't nobody trying to shed, go for broke, trying to play nothing sweet. No, stay right there on that moment. And I might just be playing the 4 for a whole 5-10 minutes, and then I might move to the 2 or something like that. But what he did, he made sure that that moment wasn't sacrificed because he was completely in tune in his spirit with what was going on in that moment. And I had the utmost respect for him because for me, that set a standard. Let me take it a step even further. There were many times that we would have a crazy move of worship. And once that thing was over, it was so crazy in there. He led the pack. He would not say one word when we stopped playing. Like, we reverenced the presence that was in that house so much that, like, no talking, no like idle chittle chatter or whatever that would normally happen after service. Nah, Doc, not today. Like, nobody said one word. We would pack up our stuff. People still in there all laid out over the floor, still going in. People still getting breakthroughs, and we didn't stop playing 10 minutes ago. And so we don't even say anything. We just, once we're done and, it's time for us to go, we would just leave. A lot of times we would just sit there, man. You just sit there and soak in the presence for the next 10, 15 minutes. Nobody said a word. And it's like, even going to your cars, you would be kind of nervous to even start a random conversation because you were so sensitive to the presence of God and what he was doing in that moment. You didn't want to mess it up or do anything. And to me, that's that accountability. That's that spiritual closeness that you want with God, that you're not just going through the motions and doing churchy stuff, but yet you don't have a relationship. Anyway, I done went way, way too long with this. And then again, I haven't. I think this was necessary. And I feel like this was super, super helpful. But those are my 4 things. And if you need to, please, by all means, go back and rewatch this video if you need to get all those things again. I seen a lot of comments, man, and I want to get through the comments, but in all honesty, I don't know if I'll truly have the time. My battery is about to die. Give me just a second, guys. Let me switch this over. I think my batteries are gonna die. Hold on. I can still hear you, but because I went past my time, my battery on my camera is low. And so, yeah, so I don't know if I'll have time to get through all the comments, but I'll try to read through as many as I can. So here we go. There we go. All right. So I'll try to read through as many as I can because I do appreciate you guys leaving comments. But y'all was dropping them the whole time I was talking. I was like, I'm talking to y'all. I'm looking at the comments like, oh, man, I know I'm not going to get through all those comments. But I'm going to try, if nothing else, to acknowledge that you said something. KP1, I think I stopped with you earlier. Sean Lewis, good morning to you, sir. Chris Parker, hi. Thanks for the guitar break. So I'm going way back. You got Dennis Black, good morning to you. P. Santa Boogie, Sean Lewis. If I hadn't already, I might say some of these twice, so y'all bear with me. I'm seeing your comments. I'm just acknowledging that I did see your comments. You should record this. I'm definitely going to record it. I spoke to Anthony. I think that was the last one that I got to. Leroy Lockhart. Yo, what's up, Leroy? Thank you for being here this morning. Leomas TV. Good morning, Brother Jermaine. Good morning to you, Sean. I spoke already. Asium 808. Good morning, Jermaine. Is it true that for a musician, okay. I don't know if I had time to answer the question, but let me try it. Is it true that for a musician to be fully matured, he or she must be active on stages for at least 25 years? Nah, I don't agree. I know what you're saying, and I know probably what's being said. But I think maybe fully matured, because there's some people that's been playing longer than that, and they're still not mature. So that's up for debate, so I'm not going to co-sign that. Because I'm going to personally say no, but at the same time, not from my perspective. Good morning, Okori Long. Andre Colson, good morning, man. Yeah, Keith Wonderboy Johnson, rest in peace, and and sending love and my thoughts and condolences to his family and anybody who knew him. Definitely, I literally just connected with Keith Wonderboy. I played with him a few weeks ago. Played behind him rather at a church, and I connected with him literally about 2.5 weeks ago, and that was, man, that was crazy. So rest in peace to him. Somebody said define toxic. Toxic is you're like affecting the band with your negative energy. You're like a negative influence. Your energy that you come with. If I didn't define it earlier, I just want to make sure I define that for KP1 if you're still here. But toxic energy, you bringing that bad energy to the table when you come. Your attitude is often foul. You kind of a rogue or a renegade. You do what you want to do, and it's like, even though like maybe this person could be an MD, but oftentimes these people aren't the MDs. They just, they can be somebody that's just really good, and they just kind of play by their own rules. And oftentimes they're really, really negative. Like I say, show up when they want to get there. Play by their own rules. That's the best I can say. Ain't the best, but I'll just leave it at that. Didn't know about Keith Wonderboy Johnson. Okay. Melvin Fogg, good morning to you. I see some folks. I had an Amen Corner for a little while. Justin Steed said this is a great topic. I felt like it would be, man. Hawaii is in the building. Rwine25, good morning to you. Sean Lewis says, I was the talented and faithful musician and never got paid for it. Amen to 1 and 2. I understand that, man. And like I said, hopefully this was helpful for any of you guys that you might identify with that you were the guy. You were just talented and faithful, and you done it out the kindness of your heart, and you never got paid for it, because I was that dude for a minute as well and have been that guy in several scenarios. And I think that's still good. And sometimes at some points, because you know that there is no motive there. And there are blessings that can come out of that. At the time when I got the call to play at New Birth, I was working for a church where I wasn't getting compensated to play. And I've told that story many, many times. And I think because I was at that ministry and the intention of my heart at that time, that's what allowed that, door to be open for me. And, other people might say, well, right place, right time. I mean, say what you say, but that's what happened for me. Dahomey Willis. Yep. I also think some people preach things to keep you in bondage and not talk up. Yeah, I got you. Yeah, I've seen that in a lot of cases too. It's called church or pastoral abuse. Wow. It ain't about the money. I say that too often. Yeah, we got to be careful what we say, because when somebody call your bluff and you saying it ain't about the money, and then they short you on your check, it's like, wait a minute. You said it wasn't about the money. Man, I have the opposite problem where I can't seem to get on with worship. With the worship team, we have so many talented musicians, and I feel like bass player. I'm sorry, that ain't funny, but it is the way you said that. So I'm blaming you. That's the reason why I'm blaming you. Said I feel like bass player number 13. Like, that's way on down the list. I would say continue to work on excellence, and when it's your time, like, even if there's no place where they're paying you to play, see if there's some other place where you can be of service to somebody and make yourself available. Let people know about you. You have to keep this in mind, out of sight, out of mind. I remember when I was in charge of kind of finding musicians for this ministry, and one of the hardest things at that time was finding quality musicians, because there are a lot of people who are online, but I'm checking your Facebook, and just be mindful of that. People are checking you. If you're having a hard time getting a job, let me throw this out there for you. Working in that position where I'm having to hire musicians, people doing background checks on you. Like, you ain't got to worry about nobody pulling up nothing with your social security number. We're looking. We look on, like, I've gotten, oftentimes people contacting me to either find a band member, or, like I said, where I'm working in a position where they want me to help put a band together. Well, I want to know what I'm bringing in to this particular ministry, because if they're trusting my judgment and I bring somebody in there and you go crazy and start tearing up their church, or you show up to their church drunk then that goes on me. Even though I didn't do it, they're looking at my word and the value of, my reputation is on the line when I'm bringing you to somebody's church. So if you're having a hard time getting hired, I'm not saying you are or you're doing this or you've done this, but you want to check your social status. Make sure what you put on social media represents who you are and how you want to be perceived. So if you got a lot of profane language and that type of thing, stuff that you've posted on Facebook and IG and all of this kind of stuff on even the stuff that you like and the stuff that you are into on social media, you got to be careful because there are people who watch that stuff when they're looking to hire musicians. And there's another thing that I'll tell you guys. There's sometimes we talk, music directors and people who can kind of make some calls and make things happen. Folks have conversations, and so you might have came up in conversation and you don't know you got looked over because of this one little quirk that you got that you do that people ain't feeling. You might smell like weed too much. Just cause it's legal don't mean you should be doing it. I'm just calling a spade a spade. It's like, well, if you have a reputation of not doing what you're supposed to do or not showing up on time, not knowing the music, kind of half doing everything, then word gets around. So you can be really, really good. And if you got a track record of being musician number one, where you're talented, but we can't count on you, then word gets around. And so people make sure that they tell folks when they're having these conversations. I'll never forget. I know this drummer friend of mine who got looked over for this major situation that could have changed his whole life because he smoked weed too much. We couldn't guarantee that he wasn't going to come in the gig. I mean, playing wise, we knew he was going to kill it. Like just coming in and knocking the gig out. Oh, he would have been a perfect fit musically. But the other stuff, because this was such a high profile gig, like we can't put our name on this dude coming in and you smelling like a weed head when you show up. Like everybody's not cool with that. Just because it's legal and just because you can don't mean you should. So be mindful. I'll just give you that. Be mindful of how you present yourself online, because if you present yourself well, people will take notice. The right person will see eventually, and you'll get that call. You'll eventually get that call because people are watching. Believe it or not, they are watching even when you think they're not watching. So if you're always operating in excellence and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, people are taking notice. They're watching. They might be waiting on the right opportunity or the right set of circumstances in order to bring you in. And, I had a friend of mine that I was kind of able to be instrumental in him getting a major gig. But I watched him for years. I watched his character. I watched the consistency, and I watched his work ethic. And when I brought his name up, I know it was something that I wasn't going to have to later renege on or be ashamed of, because I've been observing him over time. And that's what leaders and people who make those types of decisions often do. Now, there's a couple of musician number ones that squeeze through every now and again, but oftentimes they're watching those things. See, that's why I didn't want to answer these questions, because I know me. I'll get it here, and I'll be on here for the next 30 minutes trying to respond to everybody. But it's cool. Sean Lewis, he's a talk about it, Jermaine. This is what's going on in Montreal pandemic lockdown. Was a trauma that my church does not seem to have recovered from. Oh, wow. Andre says, sometimes family members that are in the church feel like they shouldn't have to pay you. Uh-oh, you're kicking at a hornet's nest, Doc. Be careful. All right. The homie Willis says, musicians can't show up at the gas station and get free gas. We can't show up at the supermarket and say we are a musician, give us free groceries. And we can't show up at the music store and give us free equipment, etc. So I get it, man. Like, if they ain't giving it to us for free, so you can't expect us to come and do all of this stuff, for free. I get what you're saying. The man speaking all truth. You just hit leaders dead in the mouth. We give much dedication only to the mistreated. Wow. Only to be mistreated. I see what you're saying. I read it wrong, but I understood it when you said it. the homie also says people must understand we don't get things for. Okay, you just came back and reiterated. Somebody talking about facts. Yep, amen. Preach. Been saying this for years. You also question what God really has for me. And so again, I see all you, Cedric Patterson, McBassey, okay, Grass, Sun Kung. Thank you for that, Santa Boogie, and all you guys, Chris Parker and whoever else, Stubby, um, Sean, who else? I think I'm just going over and over with the same names at this point. Malcolm James, he said, only what you do for Christ will last. That's what they said. He said that's what they say to keep from paying you. But come on, man. You can't do that. I wasn't ready for that one. MB says, oh, man, me, Vienna, 60. Absolutely great, mind-blowing. Thanks a lot. It's about setting an example. To play in church, you ought to be righteous. It's totally simple, but one gets to forget it. Yeah, I mean, it's the striving. It's the lifestyle that we're striving for. Like, let's not drop the standard because culture says the standard should be lower, right? Now, keep the standard. Don't drop it down, right? So Stubby says the most disappointing things about being a bass player is practicing an exciting creative gospel track, then playing the same song in mostly, okay, I'm not going to say all of that, but I get what you're saying. Oh, man. I get what you're saying, and that's speaking to a lot of situations that people are in. But just again, keep your chops and work in excellence, because if you do what you're supposed to do, your time will come, that opportunity will come, that you'll get to like exercise the gift in the way that you see fit. Or you might need to just create the situation for yourself that allows you. That's what I did with YouTube. Like, I literally, because, as a bass player, I was always playing, groove, pocket, just whatever. And nothing's wrong with that. But there's other things that I had that I want to get out, my own creativity. So that's why I started creating my own records, all of this different stuff, so that I would have an outlet. So maybe if you don't have the outlet, you need to create one. Find your own outlet, right? Maybe that could be your place of value if you have all of this stuff to add. Maybe once you start putting it out there, use social media as your outlet. I mean, why not? Post it. And that could be one way that could open the door to get you the opportunity to do the other things. Meanwhile, still maintaining your thing and never disrespect, even though, like we're doing this type of music, never take for granted the situation that you have, because it could very well not be your situation. I hate to blow it, ruin it for somebody, but it's a blessing that we get to do what we get to do. At any moment you could get up and your hands don't work. You know what I'm saying? Gratitude, man, being grateful, just being thankful for every opportunity that we get to use the gifts that we have. So Chris says, I play and travel in a Christian band. Okay. And he says, what is your take on ministry versus entertainment? That's an interesting one. I think for what we do as artists and creatives, there's some level entertainment in the church is such a taboo word, because there's that fine line between, well, we don't want to be showboating and all this kind of stuff. But I think as a professional, that's part of what we do, is making sure that the presentation of what we present is good, making sure that the presentation of what we do is polished. That's one thing I can say that I admire about playing as I've been filling in at Dream Center, the detail that goes into the presenting what you do is excellent. Those cats, they run the service, the whole thing. They run it before they have the actual service. Like, they do a run through just to make sure that everything is seamless. And I admire that. I'm like, wow, I haven't seen that before. Even, when we was playing for 30,000 people, we weren't doing that. We were doing rehearsals and that kind of thing, and we'll do a run through for rehearsal. But to run down the whole order of how things are supposed to flow, I thought that was kind of cool. But and there's still room left for flow. And so let me say that there's still room left for flow. So they might go into a bump, a shout, or a worship moment, but they still in the entertainment, so to speak, aspect of it, they're running it down just so it ain't just um it's just thrown together looking, and so I think that comes back to planning. Now just being extra on the stage and just doing the most, I think, okay, we can roll some of that stuff back. But I think if a person, especially if you're charging ticket prices, you are there to entertain people. Yeah, they like your music, but nobody wants to come pay to have a boring show. Even, and let me say it this way: entertainment ain't what people. It's not only what people think it is. My perfect example of entertainment is because we always think of pyrotechnics, fireworks going off, the lights, the smoke, the fog machine, all this stuff. We think of that when we think entertainment, but that ain't it. Bobby McFerrin, and if you guys, I know you all probably know who Bobby McFerrin is, but if you haven't done this, do yourself a favor. Just pull up any random live Bobby McFerrin video, and it's amazing, man. This cat is dressed like I'm dressed now, with some jeans and a t-shirt on and a microphone, oftentimes a chair on stage. And you look out in the audience, they pan the audience. Sometimes you got 30, 40, 50,000 people out there. And he captivates that audience. Now, he's still entertaining the audience, but the entertainment ain't in the sense that we've thought about. It's not in the from the perspective, Sean, I see you, man. Dr. Thunder. It's not in the perspective that we think entertainment. It's like he gets the crowd involved to where by the end of the concert, everybody in the room has already sang most of the music. And so the crowd feels fulfilled. They feel like they left that, and they were involved. So I think entertainment, we got such a negative spin on it, especially when it comes to church. And oftentimes I can speak for the black church. We think browbeating is entertainment. what I mean by browbeating, y'all come on, get up out your seat. If the Lord ain't done nothing for you, you sitting there like fussing at people. We think that's entertainment, or dancing and cutting cartwheels across the stage, somewhat being a clown on stage, is the only form of entertainment we can do. So most of us get a negative perspective of what entertainment is because of the extremes that we've seen. And I think there's a balance between how we do what we do as it pertains to being entertaining and entertaining people with what we do musically, because there's some level, like even with me as even with me as being a solo artist, I had to really work on that, because what I found, even though my music is not quote unquote all Christian, in the sense of the lyric content, it's like instrumental, so there's no words. But my desire with my music is still to honor God, whether I'm doing instrumental music, regardless of what I'm doing. My intention is to honor God with what I do. So when I started doing this Johnny's Pizza gig, I talk about this in my book, 10 Ways to Success, shameless plug, right? So as I'm doing this gig, I'm playing this music. I know the music was good. Not trying to be conceited, but I practiced. I knew my music. I knew my stuff. When I first started doing it, it was rough. And I had been being a solo artist for some time by that time, but I knew I needed some work on my stage presence, because that's important. I knew I needed to work on that, because people are looking at you. They're sitting down in their seats. And if you're inviting them into a space, like in church, if you're inviting them into the worship space, but you're boring, it's like, come on, man. Like, you don't know what people are coming in there with. And so you don't know, just by doing a certain thing, adjusting a certain thing, you could get people to respond to you in a different way. So now I was playing my music. I did the first couple of weeks, and people treated it like elevator music. You know what I'm saying? They just ignored it and kept eating. But once I started doing stuff or playing music that got their attention, and then I started being able to make eye contact with them. And I studied people like Bobby McFerrin and Richard Bona, and because I was wanting to figure out what were they doing to captivate an audience, and what was I not doing that the audience wasn't getting into what I was doing. So I was studying those people, because I didn't want to study the people like the Beyoncés and all these people who were dancing and moonwalking and doing all this stuff on stage. It's clear what they're doing, but I'm a musician, so I'm going to be limited to certain things that I can do on stage. So what can I study to help me to better present what I'm presenting so I can do it in excellence? And so once I started doing that, I noticed that I started getting a lot better at presenting what I was presenting, and um, bringing the audience along for the ride. When you look like you're fully enjoying what you're doing and you're giving it all to God, playing for an audience of one, going to Colossians 3:23, you know what I'm saying? Like when we're, oh yeah, shameless plug right below this video, audience of one merch is down there. So I never mentioned that on this channel before. But yeah, that is our new latest design. Audience of one, play for one, is down below if you want one of those. Anyway, back to the point. So when you're playing and you're giving your all and you're enjoying what you're doing, people are being entertained whether you're trying to do it or not. So I think that's the difference. Sometimes we see people and they look like they're having a good time on the stage and like, oh man, I guess I got to be entertaining. Like, no, just enjoy what you're doing and show outwardly that you're enjoying what you're doing. And by doing that, I think the entertainment thing kind of comes. Right. And so if you have a whole stage full of people who are genuinely enjoying what they're doing and expressing how much they enjoy what they're doing, then that energy is infectious. That energy comes across to be infectious. So anyway, last thing, and I'm going to jump off, I think. About to take up the sixth string and being a solo worship artist. Hey, go for it. Didn't think you could top last 2 weeks. Good morning, but you have, well, wow, man, that means a lot. To God be the glory. But listen, I've been on here almost 2 hours. Wow. Yeah. Y'all, yeah. Amen. I gotta go. Thank you all for, thank you all for hanging with me. Chris, I see you. Dr. Thunder, thank you for being here. Takeaway excellent and captivating. I appreciate that. Absolutely. Absolutely. Listen, y'all, this has been Jermaine Morgan. If you like what you've heard so far, go ahead and hit that bell notification. Turn on my notifications so you know when I go live like this. And also hit that subscribe button if you're not already subscribed to this channel. And that way you don't miss anything. When I go live, we have these types of conversations. And don't worry, more of this stuff is coming. And I hope to be a blessing to you. And I hope you got a blessing from this. So anyway, I'm out, y'all. Much love. Peace.